Hey Freedom Lovers, this is Dr. Peterson Pierre with America's Frontline Doctors bringing you today's Daily Dose. The FTC is finally turning its attention to one of the most abusive and deceptive sectors of the medical establishment: the doctors, hospitals, and insurance companies that medically mutilate children. This is something I'm passionate about. I'm normally a mild-mannered guy, but this topic just boils my blood. Anything that exploits and abuses children boils my blood. We call these types of people TransPredators. According to a report from the Daily Wire, the FTC is planning a full-day seminar in July focused on puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and transgender surgeries, what activists euphemistically call gender-affirming care, but what is more accurately described as medical mutilation. The event, titled The Big Lie: The Dangers of Gender-Affirming Care for Minors, signals that a formal investigation into this barbaric practice may be, hopefully, on the horizon. Quote, under the Federal Trade Commission Act, the FTC is provided broad authority to protect consumers from unfair and deceptive trade acts and practices, the internal memo reads. There is now considerable reason to believe that the doctors and medical providers pushing gender-affirming care on minors are knowingly deceiving parents by exaggerating its benefits and downplaying its harmful side effects, end quote. That would be a gross understatement. TransPredator doctors are not warning families that these drugs and surgeries result in permanent sterility and lifelong sexual dysfunction. They're certainly not disclosing the trauma, regret, and elevated suicide risk. And they're not telling parents that most children naturally resolve gender confusion by adulthood without any intervention. And they're certainly not admitting that puberty blockers artificially lock in so-called gender dysphoria by halting the very process that would bring clarity. No. Instead, these TransPredators lie. They claim these interventions are reversible. They're not. They claim these procedures bring psychological relief. They don't. Worst of all, they emotionally blackmail parents with the infamous line, quote, would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter, end quote. Yeah, but what about a living daughter? That's an option too. They don't present it because this is grotesque manipulation, especially considering that 98% of children who feel discomfort with their sex outgrow it when left alone. Child psychologists are rubber stamping children for mutilation after barely 2 hours of evaluation. If that, it's impossible to fully evaluate a child's mental state, conduct thorough assessments, and adequately communicate the irreversible consequences in that time. Yes, impossible. So yes, the FTC would be right to investigate this industry for its blatant fraud. But even if the risks were clearly communicated, these procedures would still be medically and morally indefensible. Why? Children cannot consent to their own sterilization, period. Federal law prohibits even tubal ligations, which are reversible, for anyone under 21. And no parent, no matter how informed, can legally consent to sterilize their child. No one can. A doctor who performs such a procedure on a child commits medical battery. That reality should not be controversial. Multiple legal efforts to stop these atrocities are underway, but the FTC investigation represents a different kind of threat to this industry. It exposes the fraud. The FTC exists to protect consumers from deceptive business practices. And what could be more deceptive than sterilizing a child and calling it care? What could be more fraudulent than telling a young girl she can grow up to be a man and then destroying her body to prove it? TransPredators have hoodwinked Americans into supporting medical mutilation with bogus pseudoscience. They went so far as to establish the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, a political activist organization masquerading as a scientific authority. It produces ideological guidance, which is then parroted by the medical establishment, rubber stamped by federal agencies, and cited in courtrooms as if it were gospel. But WPATH doesn't answer to science, it answers to gender activists. When the Biden administration instructed WPATH to remove its age minimums for medical mutilation, they obeyed, and the entire medical industry fell in line. An FTC investigation could shine a spotlight on how gender ideology has infiltrated medicine and corrupted every institution it touches with this deceptive pseudoscience. And that spotlight is desperately needed. On May 23rd, Colorado Governor Jared Polis signed HB 25-1309 into law. What does it do? It forces insurance companies to cover these disfiguring procedures and further fueling an industry that profits upwards of $1 million per patient. The time for action is now. The deception must end and the child butchery must stop. And those responsible must be made accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, only the truth sets you free. Stay tuned for the next Daily Dose.